From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those who champion market growth and anchor the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hey there, it's Monday. Welcome to another episode of the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook Podcast. That's Brandon Gray. I'm Mike Maxson, and how's your weekend, my man?
Another weekend at the ball field. So softball tournaments on Saturday, had a blast. Does take a little bit out of you though. You're kind of tired coming up from Monday, spending Friday doing a little bit of hitting drills, Saturday all day at the ballpark, Sunday with a little practice. You roll in Monday going, man, I got a week ahead of me still.
I never thought how draining it would be. My daughter's playing club soccer and we go to these tournaments, and I don't know, I did nothing but watch and yell at some refs. and I get home on Sunday night after a weekend of that. I'm like, why am I so tired? I've done absolutely nothing but just carry chairs in my wagon, to back and forth to different fields. I thought I was in shape for this stuff, man.
So one thing that stood out is, we're big believers in data. Whether it's your financial results or the things that lead into them. And so, you've got these tournaments and these games start to get behind and you're trying to determine, all right, when should we get our team warmed up, all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, the piece of information we're needing is the average length of a game, because even though there's a time limit, the game, if the inning starts, you still play. And so, I have that feeling of not having the data I need to make the best decision. Mm-hmm. So I know it's minor compared to running a business and not having that data still.
Oh, you always have to way to tie it back to simple numbers. Our man Micah here, he works. Some of you who are clients of ours that have been on calls, Micah Ledbetter. That dude has always figured out a way to tie something back to simple numbers. We're talking about anything, and he just ropes it back in, and I'm like, come on, man. I'm trying to escape this place for a minute. Just kidding. Well, awesome. Well, so today we're going to talk about some launch capital. So, every business, whether growing or looking to make a strategic investment, obviously that's going to cost some money. And that's what capital is. And so I like the fancy name for it: cash, money, capital. And so, what do I do with it? Well, hey, I got this pot here, 200K, 500K, $1 million, whatever it is. And I want to take it to push my business to the next level or to the next opportunity. And so we're going to talk about that, because there are some things with it of how to measure it, the longevity of that measurement. And hey, dude, sometimes you need to cut bait. Sometimes it doesn't work. Right. And so we're going to talk about that, because I know some of you here on here might be in a position where you want to go do something with that money. And it's important to understand, how to account for that. So Brandon, kick us off, man.
Sure. Yeah. So you kind of tied into where is the marketplace at today? And I think we've established on the podcast and other content that we have out, the economic environment that we're operating in is one in which the marketplace is not growing. And so in order to grow your business, you have to do something different, whether that's go and take business from competitors, whether that's a different service or product offering. Even whenever it comes to looking at the chaos that is around tariffs and what have you there, you got to change something. You got to do something different. And most of the time, whenever you're going to make a change, it requires some capital to do so. And so the question starts to become, well, how much do I invest? What type of return should I get? Over what period of return should I get it? And then how do we track and look at all of this as we're making those decisions and trying to have the data back to the softball tournaments, right? Have the data to make the best decision. And as Mike mentioned, you got to know when it's time to cut bait too. And so I think we're in an environment to where we're seeing the companies that excel right now, they're innovative. They're doing something a little bit different, something a little more creative. And that's allowing them to gain market share. And so as you kind of look at this concept around invested capital, the first thing you got to look at is, okay, well, what are our options? And as Greg has many times said, there's 3 basic rules for business success. Figure out what the market needs, figure out how to do it profitably, and then tell everyone about it. Which, hey, there's only 3 rules. That should be pretty simple, right? But actually determining those 3 and being able to follow those 3 is quite difficult. So the first one on figure out what the market needs. So one of my favorite things around this is you look at key customers, key clients. How frequently are you taking them to lunch, to dinner, whatever it may be? Yeah, it's great to kind of build the relationship, but at the same time, to pick their brain. What is the market not providing them? So, Mike, we got a question on our new client questionnaire, strategic questionnaire when someone signs on for a planning session. It's one of the last questions. And the question is, what is the market not providing you? How many times do you see an NA beside that or respondent left this blank?
Not, yeah, 90% of the time. What does this mean?
And I get,
sorry, we're not making fun of you.
We could ask the question in a different way, probably.
Yeah.
You do a better job on our.
Maybe it's just that we're too.
But that's the purpose of that question: is what's going on out there that you could potentially solve, and whenever you meet with those key customers or key clients, it's asking them that. What else can we do? What are you not receiving? What's not readily available? What's an issue, whether it's in the flow of delivery, the type of product, whatever whatever the issue is, you look to solve that. And so you got to spend a little bit of time trying to get your hand around that. You're seeing a lot of, and this will continue, it's nothing new, but whether it's automation or AI, a better system and process around those types of things. Is it a portal for your customer or client, whatever it may be? What is it that the market's not providing that you could go after? And then once you kind of get your hands around that, and the next thing is, well, how much is it going to cost me in order to do that? So I got to know what my cost is going to be to try to determine, can I be profitable in doing it? And this is one it's like building a house. It's going to cost you more than you expect and take you twice as long to finish it. That's just the nature of the beast in most cases. And so trying to determine and err on the high end, I want to make sure that I've got access or I have plenty of capital if I really believe that this is something that is worth pursuing. There have been approaches in the past that basically look at the probability. So, hey, you think it's a 50% chance that this is going to work? What is your investment that you're willing to put in place? I take 50% of that. Look at it through that lens. But I'll tell you, in the current marketplace, with the amount of uncertainty that's out there, it's really hard to assign a probability. I mean, it was a guess at best to start with, and now you throw in all of the things that are taking place in the market. It's really a guess.
Well, you used to have some relative level of, I always felt like it was a 49% chance once upon a time of, hey, I make this marketing investment and I'm going to get this return, right? Like I just felt like that was there to a level of consistency. So when I call him and go, hey, I'm going to make this marketing investment, you're like, yeah, man, it's looking good. I mean, yeah.
Everybody loves to spend.
I go back to our podcast not too long ago with Sean Bussey, and that quote just sticks with me, is that marketing investments used to be exponential and now they're incremental. Now, that doesn't mean you can't achieve your launch capital objectives, but like Brandon said, is the market wanting this investment from you at this moment? Is it giving you that right now and making that call? Maybe that's not the right play to launch. And Brandon, I have a question for you. When it comes to launch capital, do you look at just the launch of making a strategic initiative or the overall launch of dollars in the growth of the business? So what I mean is like, hey, from 22 to 23, I grew by $1 million and I had to add costs to the operating side of my business to then, to account for that. Well, growth is still pretty good. I'm growing 20%. Same thing happens 24 to 25. And then 25, you're going, well, I kept growing at 20%. I got this money. I know I'm going to have to grow another 20%. I'm going to have to go ahead and it's going to be an overall OpEx investment, facility, marketing, people. Do you sometimes lump it together? Because I know I do with my clients when I'm sort of explaining the dollar amount in that, say, hey, you took $800K wrapped up in that OpEx, and that was what you used to launch into next year. But guess what? The growth didn't happen.
Right.
And now we're there. So what put on that, talk about that just aside from strategic versus just the overall nature of growth.
There's kind of two phases to it. And I kind of break it down into the first phase is proof of concept. So how much capital am I going to have to deploy to determine if this is something that the market is receptive of? And so sometimes it, like we said earlier, it's a little bit more of a guess. In other cases, it could be like geographic expansion. You pretty much know, hey, this market is prime for the taking. We need to move into it. I may do a little bit of market research. I may, slow roll, do a soft opening of a location or a presence in that marketplace. And so I'm kind of at least trying to determine the first step is going to be, okay, is this a go or a no go? And that's the one it's rather important to kind of have a line in the sand as to, I'm willing to put this amount in to test the water and see what it's going to look like. Now, I keep track of that, and I add it into the second part, which is what is it going to take to get it fully going and then supported? And the filter that I like to use in that case is, if this activity went away, what cost go away with it? So let's use the example of geographic expansion. Let's just say in this case, I'm going to have a facility. I'm going to have marketing. I'm going to have some type of personnel at that facility. And I think the key here is if those people go away, if that location goes away, I count them. If I'm just telling my team, hey, you're going to spend 4 hours of your day at this place and 4 hours at the other one, and if I did not have that location, they would stay, I don't add them in because that's a cost I have regardless. Okay. But if that cost goes away, if that activity goes away, I add it. And that's the second phase. So I look at the first phase of what did it take to get market acceptance or determine market acceptance. And the second phase is what's it going to take to keep this going? And we define launch capital as that spend that you have to invest until that activity becomes profitable. Now, that's another one that can be a little bit slippery to put your hands around when you're forecasting it out, because you're trying to determine the margin it's going to generate, the costs that are coming in, and then for how long until that gets rolling. And so if you add those two together, you kind of can get an idea of, okay, it's going to take me $20K to determine if this is something I want to do. I pencil it out and be conservative, because once again, it's like building the house, right? It's going to take twice as long and cost twice as much. How long am I willing to supplement this activity's losses until it becomes profitable? And have your lines in the sand. If you think, hey, 6 months into it, it's just not going to work, and you know it, it's just like hiring a team member that's not working out. You got to go ahead and pull the plug, because hope's not a great strategy for the next 6 months. And so as I'm looking at those buckets of cost, I'm determining at what point does it become profitable. At the point it becomes profitable, launch capital spend has stopped. And so then I can go into kind of analyzing the next phase, which is how long is it going to take me to get my 50% target return? Now, depending upon the activity, this could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 3 years. And we get a lot of questions around that. Well, how long should it take? And depending upon the type of activity, if it's a marketing campaign, I typically want to see the results pretty quickly. If I'm going into a new location, it may take a year. It could take longer than that. If I'm launching a new product or service, depending upon the complexity, it could take quite some time. And so I'm mapping that out, and then in best and worst case scenario, am I happy with the amount of time it takes to get back to that 50% return?
Is there a rule of thumb, Brandon? Is we looking at 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 18?
So depends on the activity. If it's something that should be a short turnaround, like I mentioned a moment ago, like marketing or something like that, I'm going to have a pretty quick window, less than a year in most cases, that I'm seeing that it's going to work, and hopefully I get my capital investment back. Now, there's always outliers to where it's like, well, it takes us 6 months to close on something. Okay. But in most cases, it can be less than that. If I'm looking at a new offering, a new product, a new location, um, perhaps even vertical integration of another company with my business, whatever it may be, typically the longest that I see from entrepreneurs that you're willing to make the bet to see if it pays off is about 3 years. And that's more so like if you're kind of looking more so acquisition, some of the longer term.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But so you know, it can be 6 months to 3 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. If it starts to go past that, I've got to really evaluate, is this the best time and the best place to put my money? And so in the ideal world, you don't have just one option for that you're looking to reinvest that has a launch capital component to it. I'm trying to weigh out 2, 3, 4 options. And as I run out these scenarios, I'm trying to get to, well, okay, what's going to get my return on the capital the earliest? And then, you know, you don't want to ignore it, but you also want to look at, okay, let's say one is a year and another's 2 years. What's the potential overall impact it can make to my business? And so I'm trying to evaluate my options based upon that criteria.
So what about and I know I have these conversations with clients, especially when, and let's use marketing. I'm going to pick on marketing because it's sometimes, and it's a lot of times a launch capital thing. When someone goes to grow, obviously you got to tell people about it, right? So so I'm going to use them as an example. It's been hit or miss in some industries with marketing. It could be something from Google switched their algorithm and it's haywire, or it's a business that is a non-necessity, so it's more oh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Discretionary.
Anyway, yeah, discretionary. And it's Monday, and big word, and it might be a little bit tougher. So when you're looking at some of these launch capital costs, I believe it's important to, especially if it's a substantial investment, to have a strict monitoring period on
Right.
it.
Yep.
Don't just dump that money into marketing right now and maybe a tough marketing environment for your industry and then just say, oh, well, I'm going to let it ride for 12 months and see. Because guess what? There might be flashing red lights above it in 2 months telling
Yep.
you, like, hey, this ain't going to work.
So that's
Oh,
where on these types of investments, it's okay to delegate certain activity to your team, but never forget who the investor is. And that's you. You're the owner. You're the investor. And so it's really easy to spend other people's money. So don't always rely upon your team putting that line in the sand as to, is this going to be a go or no go? You know, I love the model that most VC firms have when it comes to this. They may commit to you $2 million, but you're only going to get $500,000 until this milestone's met.
mm-hmm.
And then you may get $1 million. And then once that milestone's met, you may get another $500,000, So, you kind of want to have a plan based upon, if I see this at this point in time, then it triggers this. But don't just give your team a bucket of money and say, run to the finish line, because they'll go spend it.
Oh, yeah.
And whether or not it's in your best interest or not. So the last part, let's say you got the great idea. You've evaluated the options, the payback time. You've got your lines in the sand of it's a go or no go, all those kind of things, and you select that you want to go with it. Now we got to have a way in order to track it, in order to see, is it going to hit target? Is it going, or are we approaching a line in the sand? We got to isolate the activity as best as possible in order to make some of those decisions. So the technique that we really like is to use the other income and expense category of the simple numbers P&L.
Absolutely.
And if you got multiple ones going on, then that's where you kind of want to, have it hit there, but you want to have some offline tracking as to what's taking place. The margin that it's generating, the marketing cost, the facility cost, the people cost, the overhead cost. And once again, those should be tied directly back, if at all possible, to that activity. If they go away, if the activity goes away, you count them. If not, don't go through the cost accounting exercise of allocating existing square footage space that you're already paying rent on for that activity, because that activity goes away, that space stays. All right. So then once you've done that and you're tracking it ongoing, it becomes a little bit more clear. All right, I need to pull the plug, or I need to keep going, or it's doing better than expected. Let's put some more fuel into it and see if we can accelerate it. But without that last piece of insight, you're just kind of guessing. And and I get it. It's not always a perfect science. Sometimes it's really difficult to tie some things back, and don't get too caught up in the weeds into the second and third levels of, well, they came in with this, or that ad got their attention and they eventually added this and this and this. It's like, all right, let's keep it simple to start with. Let's get some data. Good enough data on time is better than perfect data late, and let's start tracking it. And I think that's really kind of the key. Then whether I need to pull the plug, keep going, or what have you. And I can tell you 1,000 stories about times in which somebody got 6-7 figures into a launch capital spend and said, I'm just in too deep, we got to finish. And there's not many success stories that come out of that.
Yeah, it's a fine art. You're going to have some misses. Some year it's going to work. Some year, I think Greg does in his second book, Simple Numbers 2.0, where he discusses launch capital with a real client of ours. And I think one of the things in there that was fascinating was how it worked for those couple years. And then one year it just kind of like it did it.
Yeah.
And it worked again after that.
So we always make money on a spreadsheet.
That's right.
And so, that as much data as you have around it, as much of a information that you can gather around it, yes, that's going to aid in making a decision. But there's also that component called your gut. And I worked with the client that we wrote about in Simple Numbers 2.0 with the launch capital spend. And even though there was a year in which the plays were not working as they were designed to work, we had enough data and enough of a gut sense around the activity about them to believe that the next year it should. And it did. And so, turned out to work. But, you're not always going to bat 1,000.
Yeah, well, this is great. I thought this was a good one for today. Some good launch capital talk, deployment of that cash. And, that's it's an important piece, because right now in this market, you're going to have to take it. You're going to have to make a move. And that can be everything from, again, a marketing investment. It could be a labor investment where, hey, you know what? I always wanted to launch this service, but it's going to take a high priced person to do it. And I got to go get them. And it might take you some money ahead of time until everything gets spun up, but it's what you got to do to make it happen. It could be hey, you know what? I know I could produce more if I had bigger square footage, right? We're sort of maxed out, but it's going to take that investment. These are all things that are going to need to happen in today's world, because standing still is not going to get you anywhere right now. And so that's why we wanted to talk about this today, was you're going to have to make a move. And so we want you to know that when you deploy that cash, how to best track it, measure it, and just some other concepts around it to make sure, you got your hands around it so it doesn't get away from you. And next thing you know, you just blew a bunch of money and nothing happened. So anything else, Brandon?
I think that's it for today.
Awesome. All right, you all take it easy. Will we be back next week? We have no idea what we're going to talk about right now. Could be a guest, could be whatever, but I'm sure 10 minutes before we do this, me and Brandon will come up with something. So y'all have a great week.
See y'all.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business, or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. The views expressed on Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers podcast, are those of the presenter and moderator and do not necessarily reflect the views of CRI Simple Numbers or the CRI family of companies. This podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional advice received directly. Consult with your CRI Simple Numbers advisor or another trusted professional if you have questions about your specific situation.